The scent of pine needles, damp earth, and distant smoke was usually a familiar comfort to Michael Brown, a seasoned mountain firefighter, but today it carried a different, more urgent resonance. The late autumn chill had settled deep into the Sierra Nevada foothills, a treacherous preamble to the harsh winter that was just weeks away. Michael, a man in his early 40s whose rugged face bore the sun-kissed lines of countless days battling blazes and rescuing lost hikers, was on a solo patrol. His vintage olive-green Ford F-250 pickup, affectionately nicknamed the Beast for its unwavering reliability on rough terrain, rumbled along a seldom-used logging trail, cutting through a dense stand of ponderosa pines. He was checking on a remote sensor array, a routine task that offered him a few hours of much-needed solitude after a particularly grueling fire season. The silence of the forest was usually absolute, broken only by the whisper of the wind through the tall trees or the distant cry of a hawk. Today, however, an anomaly pricked at his trained senses. A flicker of movement, incongruous against the tapestry of greens and browns, caught his eye. It wasn't the darting of a deer or the lumbering gait of a bear. This was something else. He slowed the Beast, his hand instinctively resting on the gear shift, his gaze sharpening. Through the thinning canopy of trees, near an overgrown, forgotten trail that local law said led to an old abandoned copper mine, he saw her, a woman. She was barely visible, a ghost against the backdrop of the encroaching dusk, huddled beside a fallen log. Her form was slight, almost fragile, and her movements were weak, unsteady as if each breath was a monumental effort. Michael's gut clenched. No one came this far out unless they were lost, desperate, or foolish, and this woman radiated an aura of profound, heartbreaking desperation. He parked his truck, its engine ticking softly as it cooled, and grabbed his emergency first aid kit and a thermal blanket. As he approached cautiously, his firefighter training kicking in, he called out, his voice a calm, measured baritone. "Hey, are you okay? I'm Michael Brown, U.S. Forest Service." She startled. A deer caught in headlights and slowly, painfully turned her head. Her eyes, wide and unnervingly bright in her gaunt face, were pools of terror and exhaustion. Her hair, once likely a vibrant black, was matted with dirt and leaves, framing a face etched with privation. It was then he noticed the unmistakable swell of her abdomen. She was pregnant, significantly so, perhaps 8 or 9 months along. The realization hit him like a physical blow. A pregnant woman alone, starving and freezing in the desolate wilderness. It was a nightmare scenario. He knelt a few feet away, maintaining a non-threatening distance, his eyes scanning for any sign of injury or immediate danger. "Ma'am," he repeated, his voice softer now. "You're safe. I'm here to help. What's your name?" Her lips moved, dry and cracked, but no sound emerged. She tried to push herself up, a futile effort that only resulted in a weak tremor running through her emaciated frame. A wave of dizziness seemed to overcome her, and she swayed precariously. Michael saw the telltale signs of severe dehydration and hypothermia, overlaid with profound malnutrition. There was no time for questions, no room for hesitation. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a race against time. He stood, moving with a controlled urgency that belied the situation's gravity. "Listen to me," he commanded, his voice firm but not unkind, cutting through her daze. "You need to get in my truck, now." He didn't wait for a response, knowing she was too far gone to process complex instructions. He gently, but firmly, took her arm, feeling the alarming coldness of her skin, and began to help her to her feet, supporting most of her weight. She was lighter than he expected, a testament to her prolonged suffering. As he guided her slowly towards the Beast, each step an agony for her, he kept talking, his voice a steady anchor in the swirling chaos of her mind. "It's okay, we're almost there. I've got blankets, water, food. We'll get you warm." He got her into the passenger seat, carefully bundling the thermal blanket around her shivering form. He handed her a bottle of water, insisting she take small sips, and then offered a protein bar. She looked at the bar with a mixture of hunger and disbelief, as if it were a mirage. "Just a little, take it slow," he urged, his gaze never leaving her. "We need to get you to town, to a hospital." The nearest town, a small outpost called Pine Valley, was a good 70 minutes drive away, and the fading light meant navigating the rough roads would be even more challenging. As he started the Beast, turning the heater on full blast, He radioed in his situation, keeping his report brief and factual, omitting the harrowing details to avoid undue alarm, but ensuring that medical assistance would be ready upon their arrival. He learned her name was Jessica Sanchez, a whispered fragment she offered between gasps for breath. Her age, he guessed, was late 20s, perhaps 28, though her ordeal made her appear older, her youthful vitality stripped away by hardship. He didn't press for details, not yet. The priority was her survival, and that of the child within her. The drive to Pine Valley was a tense blur. Jessica, wrapped in the thick blanket, occasionally shivered, but the warmth of the truck and the small sips of water seemed to bring a flicker of life back to her eyes. She eventually drifted into a fitful sleep, her head leaning against the window, her hand unconsciously cradling her swollen belly. Michael, meanwhile, navigated the winding mountain roads with practiced ease, his mind racing. Who was she? How did she end up so far from civilization in such a desperate state? The abandoned copper mine, he recalled, was a place prospectors had flocked to decades ago before the vein ran dry, leaving behind a skeletal landscape of rusting equipment and collapsed shacks. It was a place where dreams had died, and now it seemed life itself had nearly followed suit. He thought of his own quiet life, structured and predictable, dedicated to serving the forest and its inhabitants. He had always been a protector, but this was different. This wasn't about putting out a fire or finding a lost hiker. This was about saving two lives, a woman and her unborn child, from the crushing indifference of the wilderness, and he suspected the cruelty of man. The sheer vulnerability of Jessica, alone and defenseless, stirred something deep within him, an instinct he hadn't known he possessed, a fierce protective surge that transcended mere duty. As they finally descended into the outskirts of Pine Valley, the few streetlights cast long, wavering shadows. The small town's emergency services, alerted by Michael's earlier call, were already waiting at the clinic, a modest building that served as the local hospital. A small ambulance was parked outside, its lights flashing silently. Michael pulled up, and immediately, a team of paramedics and a doctor, Dr. David Chen, a meticulous man in his late 50s, moved efficiently to Jessica's side. "Michael, what have we got?" Dr. Chen asked, his voice calm, but his eyes full of concern as he assessed Jessica. "Severe dehydration, hypothermia, malnutrition, pregnant," Michael rattled off, his voice betraying a hint of the strain he had been under. "Found her near the old copper mine trail. She's been through hell." As they carefully transferred Jessica to a stretcher, she opened her eyes, a moment of fleeting awareness, and her gaze, weak but direct, met Michael's. There was a silent acknowledgement, a shared moment of relief and gratitude before she was whisked away into the clinic. Michael watched her go, a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration washing over him. His shift was over, but he knew with a certainty that resonated through his bones that his involvement in Jessica Sanchez's story was far from it. He felt a profound sense of responsibility, an unspoken promise to this woman and the life within her. The beast, now empty in the passenger seat, felt strangely quiet, the phantom chill of Jessica's ordeal still lingering in the air. He leaned back against the headrest, the adrenaline slowly dissipating, leaving him with a quiet resolve. This was just the beginning. Michael stayed at the Pine Valley Clinic long after Jessica had been stabilized. He sat in the small, sterile waiting room, the hum of the fluorescent lights a sharp contrast to the familiar sounds of the wilderness. He was a man who preferred action to waiting, a firefighter whose instinct was to run toward the danger, not sit idly by. Yet he knew leaving now would feel like abandonment. Dr. Chen eventually found him, his expression serious but relieved. "She's stable, Michael. Critically malnourished and dehydrated, but her vitals are holding. She's pregnant, about 35 weeks. The baby is stressed but alive. A miracle, frankly." Dr. Chen, a veteran of rural medicine, had seen his share of tough cases, but Jessica's ordeal was shocking even to him. "She's not saying much, just repeated her name once, Jessica Sanchez. She's in shock, emotionally and physically." Michael explained everything he knew, or rather, everything he didn't know. No car, no identification, no belongings save the tattered clothes on her back. Over the next 5 days, Michael returned to the clinic every evening after his patrol duties. His colleagues, knowing Michael's fiercely private nature, teased him lightly about his new patient, But they also respected the deep sense of responsibility he clearly felt. He brought Jessica wildflowers, not the expensive kind, but mountain asters and goldenrod he'd gathered himself, along with books from his own small library, mostly dog-eared copies of Western history and nature journals. He didn't press her for information, instead offering a quiet, steady presence. He'd talk about the changes in the forest canopy, the challenging maneuvers of the smoke jumpers, the necessary preparation for the coming snowpack, filling the silence with the mundane stability of his world. It was during one of these quiet visits that Jessica finally spoke beyond single-word answers. Her voice was thin, reedy, like a forgotten instrument. She revealed that she was 28 years old and had been traveling west from a southwestern state with her partner, a construction foreman named Samuel. They had been seeking a fresh start, a slice of the promised life-developing land near a popular reservoir further south. Samuel, she explained, had been ambitious but fundamentally selfish, pouring their meager savings into an old, unreliable four-wheeler that died on a desolate stretch of highway nearly 4 weeks prior. She confessed that their relationship had already been strained by financial pressures and the stress of the pregnancy, but when the vehicle sputtered its last, so did Samuel's commitment. "He just walked away," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the hospital sheet, a raw knot of pain constricting her throat. "He said I was too much baggage, that the baby would ruin his freedom, and he was taking the first ride out of the area. He promised to send money, but he never called back." She had stayed near the broken-down vehicle for about 9 days, subsisting on the last of their crackers and a small canteen of water. When the food ran out and her attempts to flag down the extremely infrequent passing vehicles failed, she had followed what she thought was a marked boundary line, convinced she could reach a fire lookout tower she'd once seen on a crumpled map. Instead, the path devolved into the overgrown trail that led to the abandoned copper mine, where she had collapsed 5 days into her desperate, lonely trek. The emotional abandonment she conveyed was far more devastating than the physical ordeal. She wasn't just starving, she was stripped of hope, conviction, and her very sense of worth. The unfairness of her situation, the betrayal, the exposure to the elements, was a heavy weight she carried, a burden of profound injustice. Michael listened, his expression softening into an intense, quiet empathy. He didn't offer platitudes or condemn Samuel. He simply said, "That was the act of a coward, Jessica, and you are incredibly strong for walking away from that broken promise and fighting to save yourself and your child." He used the word child deliberately, gently cementing the reality of the life she was carrying, reminding her that she was not alone in this fight. This acknowledgement, this simple validation of her struggle, was a turning point. A single tear traced a clean path through the grime on her cheek, the first she had allowed herself to shed in weeks. Her physical recovery was slow but steady. She was discharged from the clinic a week and a half later, well enough to be cared for outside of a hospital setting, but with nowhere to go. The social services structure in the remote area was threadbare, unable to offer long-term, immediate housing for a woman in her condition. They suggested a distant women's shelter nearly 400 miles away, an option that filled Jessica with fresh dread. She couldn't face another lonely, uncertain journey. She looked at Michael, who had come to collect her, a flicker of panic in her eyes. I don't know what to do," she admitted, the fear of the unknown crippling her. Michael knew he had a choice. He could fulfill his duty by dropping her off at the bus station with a ticket to the distant shelter, thereby clearing his conscience and returning to his predictable existence. Or he could answer the fierce, protective instinct that had surged up in him when he found her. His home was a small, well-maintained 2-bedroom cabin, a 50-minute drive outside of Pine Valley, nestled deep within his patrol zone, a place he built with his own 2 hands and fiercely guarded its privacy. It was his sanctuary, a fortress of quiet order. But looking at Jessica, frail and terrified, clutching a small plastic bag with the few belongings she now possessed, he realized his sanctuary felt hollow without the compassion that had brought him out of the woods. He inhaled the crisp mountain air and made a decision that would stun everyone who knew the quiet, reserved firefighter. "You're not going to a shelter, Jessica. You're coming home with me." He spoke with quiet conviction. "My place is safe, warm, and quiet. You and the baby can stay there until you are healthy and have a plan. I have an extra room. It's not permanent, but it's a start. You don't have to be alone anymore." Jessica's reaction was one of pure shock, then overwhelming relief that blossomed into gratitude. Her eyes, no longer haunted, filled with a fragile hope. Dr. Chen, who was present, merely smiled knowingly. He had often observed that the toughest men in the mountains possessed the tenderest hearts. The drive back to Michael's cabin was different this time. Jessica was still quiet, but now she took in the majestic scenery. The towering pines, the granite peaks, the glint of sunlight on the frozen creek, with a sense of wonder, not dread. The cabin, when they arrived, was rustic but immaculate. It smelled of cedar and wood smoke, a scent of safety and permanence. It was a home built on a foundation of honest work and solitude, and now that solitude was being shattered, but in a way that felt like creation. Michael showed her the small guest room, already prepared with fresh linens, and insisted she rest. He then set about preparing a nourishing meal, a simple, hearty pork stew with wild herbs, while Jessica watched him move with an easy efficiency that spoke of years of self-reliance. That evening, as they ate together by the flickering light of the wood stove, the silence between them was not one of fear, but of shared, comfortable sanctuary. Jessica, eating slowly but with a returning appetite, finally met his gaze across the small pine table. "Michael," she said, her voice clear and strong for the first time, "thank you. You saved us." He only nodded, his gaze steady. "We're a team now, Jessica. We get through this together." The emotional deepening was tangible, a bond forged not by romance, but by the necessity of survival and the extraordinary courage of a single man to open his heart and his carefully constructed life to two strangers in need. This story, about a man choosing compassion over comfort, of facing the messiness of life rather than retreating into the neatness of solitude, is a powerful reminder of what we owe each other. If you're finding yourself drawn into the quiet dignity of Michael's sacrifice, think about the last time you decided to help a stranger, even when it complicated your own life. Tell us about it in the comments below. What was the selfless act that ended up changing your life? Your stories are part of the heartbeat of this community. And if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're dedicated to bringing you more true tales of hope, survival, and the profound connections that emerge when we choose kindness. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that defied the expected norms of the frontier, or any life for that matter. Michael, the meticulous firefighter who once measured his existence by the quiet solitude of his mountain home, found his life irrevocably altered, but not diminished. His days were still spent patrolling the vast, rugged landscape, but now his efforts were anchored by the necessity of returning to a warm, living space. Jessica, meanwhile, blossomed under the security and nourishment. The skeletal fear left her eyes, replaced by a quiet determination. She took on the domestic tasks with gratitude, cleaning the cabin, organizing the pantry, and, most surprisingly, showing an intuitive talent for crafting and repair, creating necessary storage solutions from scrap wood. The shared space became a crucible where trust, gratitude, and mutual respect were forged, replacing the sharp edges of their individual past traumas. The emotional climax arrived just before Christmas. A massive early snowstorm, deeper and more aggressive than any Michael had seen in a decade, descended upon the Sierra, sealing the cabin into its hidden valley with walls of impenetrable white. It was during the peak of this blizzard, the wind howling a primordial song against the sturdy log walls, that Jessica went into labor. Michael's training, honed for emergency response, immediately kicked in. He knew they couldn't risk the treacherous 50-minute drive to the clinic. He had studied the few medical books he owned, having anticipated this possibility, and now his focused calm was the only thing standing between fear and success. The small guest room, now dimly lit by oil lamps and kept warm by the roaring wood stove, became a makeshift delivery room. Michael's large calloused hands accustomed to wielding an axe or stabilizing accident victims, moved with a surprising professional tenderness. He spoke to Jessica with the same measured, calm authority he used to direct fire crews, guiding her breathing, offering encouragement, and managing the unexpected complications with an unflappable focus that amazed her. After a long night of labor that tested Jessica's newfound strength and Michael's immense reservoir of self-control, their son arrived just as the first fragile light of dawn filtered through the cabin window. He was small but robust, his first cries a triumphant clear sound that silenced the wind and filled the cabin with the raw, undeniable force of new life. Michael cut the cord, his eyes wet with tears he made no effort to hide. And when he placed the warm, damp bundle in Jessica's arms, the world outside, the snow, the solitude, the past betrayals, ceased to exist. They named him Gabriel, a name that means, "God is my strength," a quiet acknowledgement of the miraculous nature of his arrival. From that moment, Michael's protective instinct solidified into a permanent commitment. He was captivated. He traded his quiet evenings reading for pacing the floor with the fussy infant, sang deep, off-key lullabies, and carved tiny wooden toys from pine scraps. Jessica witnessed the complete transformation of the reserved, self-contained firefighter into a doting father figure, a profound testament to his capacity for unconditional love. Gabriel's birth resolved the immediate conflict of survival, cementing the bond between the adults through the innocent, shared responsibility of parenthood. As the heavy snows began to recede with the coming of spring, the question of the future, long avoided, finally needed to be addressed. Jessica was healthy, Gabriel was thriving, and the mountain pass would soon be clear. She had the means to leave now, to take the journey to the coastal towns where Samuel had once planned to seek work and start her life over. But the idea felt desolate. She had built more than just shelter here. She had built a life on the foundation of trust and respect Michael had laid. Her former dream of a manufactured life with an unreliable man had been replaced by the quiet, honorable reality of partnership with Michael. She didn't need to ask. Michael asked first, not with a grand romantic gesture, but with the quiet dignity that defined him. He approached her one evening by the fire, holding Gabriel gently. "Jessica," he began, his voice rough with sincerity. "I know my life is simple, maybe too quiet for some, but I need you and Gabriel here. My life was fine before, but now it feels meaningful. I offer you partnership, devotion, and a promise to always stand by you and our boy." He didn't promise riches or an easy path, only an unwavering commitment forged in shared hardship. Jessica's answer was immediate and absolute. She reached out, placing her hand over the large one cradling Gabriel, her smile radiant. "This is our home, Michael. We've already built our life here." They were married that summer, in a small ceremony witnessed by the Peaks, the local minister from Pine Valley officiating, a man who spoke of the power of redemption and the unlikely places where love takes root. News of the mountain firefighter who had rescued the pregnant widow, adopted her child, and built a life with them in the wilderness spread like wildfire through the scattered communities. The details were exaggerated and romanticized in regional newspapers and cheap novels. Michael was the mountain man with the golden heart, Jessica, the brave widow of the Rockies, but the core truth remained. An act of profound kindness had blossomed into a formidable, enduring love. Their home became a quiet center of gravity in the foothills. Michael expanded the cabin, adding sturdy rooms for their future family. Jessica's innate kindness and talent for repair made her a local resource, and she opened a small, respectable trading post where travelers could find honest dealing and a nourishing meal. Their story offered a powerful lesson, that true strength lies not in physical isolation or individual success, but in the courage to be vulnerable, to love, and to build community. They proved that forgiveness for the cruel injustices of the past was possible, and that new beginnings emerge not from running away, but from standing firm on the ground you've chosen to cultivate. Their legacy, passed down to Gabriel and the children who followed, was a profound understanding that the most significant transformation is not conquering the wilderness, but conquering the isolation within one's own heart. We hope the story of Michael and Jessica and the birth of their beautiful legacy in the mountain cabin resonated deeply with you. Their journey from desperation to enduring love is a powerful reminder that courage and compassion are the highest forms of heroism. If you enjoyed witnessing this story of profound overcoming and the power of an unexpected second chance, we warmly invite you to join our community and stay connected. Hit that subscribe button now. Let's continue to share these tales of human resilience and kindness. Tell us in the comments below, which city are you watching this story from? We love seeing how far and wide these stories of hope travel. And finally, what did you learn from Michael's choice to risk his solitude? Did you like the video? Let us know.